marketing has really just become from an operational standpoint, kind of an impossible task in a lot of ways when you think about operationalizing across all of the channels, all of the technology systems, the data challenges, and then throw, compliance on top of that. It's enough to make you want to pull your hair out.
Hi, I'm Greg Stuart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur. So, Greg, we've seen a lot of people doing things like using AI to write their PowerPoints presentations, and that's all well and good. I don't mean to disparage anything that you can do with AI to make your life better, but that's not really one of the more sophisticated uses of it. The real value, I think, is coming from building these custom models and moving beyond the simple copy into things like analytics. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, listen, I'm not nearly as sort of, technically oriented as you are, Rex, but, and as much as I appreciate numbers, I think you get that, much better, but that certainly is the drive of what the MMA is all about to help marketers get there. And in particular, using AI for some of the more complicated things, which is, I think, what makes this so much more interesting for our conversation today.
Yeah, really having the human in the loop and the verification part's a really important part, especially if you're working in companies that are heavily regulated. And if you're working in finance, insurance, medicine, you've got lots of different regulations, and it's important to really think about the use of AI differently and the risk spectrum differently. And today we have a guest to help us really unpack how to use AI in marketing operations when you're operating in these heavily regulated industries.
Yeah, I think smart, more technology-oriented people is going to be really important. So listen, I'd love to introduce to our listeners Steve Erbentraut.
Erbentraut.
I'd like to introduce Steve Erbentraut. He's a managing director for technology solutions at Marketbridge. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here.
Good.
Well, maybe start off by telling us what Marketbridge does. Give the audience a little understanding of your background too, as well.
So we're essentially a go-to-market consultancy, and we do have an agency arm. I work on the consultancy side, so we do a lot of work in marketing data and analytics and just go-to-market strategy in general. So my practice area focused is really building data warehouses around go-to-market data primarily. And then we have sort of a deep data science arm that does a lot of work in MMM and MTA and sort of other managed analytics services. We do have an interesting arm on the agency side, which gives us some sort of purview into execution, and we do a lot of work with B2B specifically on the agency. So it's an interesting mix.
And you do a lot of work in regulated industries. So tell us a bit about how you see regulated industries as being different when you think about marketing and go-to-market, and particularly AI, where some of the applications you can create have a different kind of risk when you're working in these regulated industries. And maybe highlight some of the risks that you see as being important to be thinking about.
Sure. So, regulated industries, are slow moving, by definition, and conservative. So, what we see with our clients is, they really need to be thoughtful about what they let the AI engines do, right? So, a lot of these industries have a very close link to trust, right? So we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about finance, insurance, and those are all rooted in trust. And there's actually been an interesting study over the last 50 years measuring trust across our society, and we're in sort of a historically low trust environment.
Yeah, we're absolutely in a funny spot on that today, aren't we? As a society.
Yeah, exactly. It dipped. It was somewhere. They asked these sort of really simple questions like, most people can be trusted, and it floated around 50%, 50 years ago, and it's at like 25% now, right?
Yeah,
so if you are thinking about, right, these aren't trivial products, right? We would consider these, we would call them considered purchases, healthcare, investment management, right? This isn't something that a consumer is just going to necessarily see a single ad and click on it and put their credit card in, right? So there's a lot of brand and nurture marketing involved. And so, while there's a lot of excitement and interesting in real efficiencies from AI, they need to be thoughtful about how they adopt this, right? So just sort of chasing the efficiency dollar can be short-sighted in some cases, right? Like if these companies send out communications that, don't get checked and the AI makes a bad decision, like there's consequences for that, right? There's liabilities. Often customer communications have to include, disclosures that need to be reviewed and approved by FINRA and legal departments. There's health information. So, what happens if an AI engine makes the wrong decision and sends you, hey, here's a device to manage your diabetes, and you don't have that, right? That's a pretty creepy and weird thing. But those are the types of issues that these customers have to think about.
The only thing that's more creepy is when you do have diabetes, but you haven't given them permission to talk to you about it, and you send them the device. Which is also, if you're building data warehouses, that whole idea of how personal can you be with such sensitive information. Maybe unpack a little bit more about how you, because of those sensitivities and the privacy issues, how you're thinking about where AI fits in. Because Greg has this vision, which is that everything is going to be decisioned by AI continuously without a human in the loop.
Yeah.
But this might be an industry where maybe that might not play out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, in the beginning, none of these companies are going to let an AI engine just make a decision, right? So everything's going to be human in the loop, human reviewed. There's still a lot of opportunities to, there are so many mechanics in marketing. I mean, just the idea of automating a lot of those mechanics is exciting. I mean, marketing has really just become, from an operational standpoint, kind of an impossible task in a lot of ways when you think about operationalizing across all of the channels, all of the technology systems, the data challenges, and then throw, compliance on top of that. It's enough to make you want to pull your hair out. And so I lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
Well, and we can take this in different directions, but I think we were talking about the privacy issues and how far you can have AI, and I think you made a really good point about having a human in the loop and needing in these regulated industries where that just may be kind of a given for the next several years or maybe forever. So I think
right. Or does that mean like you couldn't have AI in these industries? Or
no, I don't. I don't think so. So I think in the beginning it's going to be human in the loop, right? To sort of summarize and surface. I think the progression of this is probably going to be rooted in like the verifiability of the output of AI, right? So there are some frameworks that are out there, still kind of early, XAI, right, is one of them. They're probably still early in their maturity across the major, LLM company, the LLM developers. But that's going to be an important thing, right? Like if something does go wrong, what was the audit trail? What's the explainability of how those AI engines made their decisions, right? Because even without AI, that's like a big thing that you have to worry about is audit trail and controls and sort of clear accountability, like who is signing off on this type of content. Most of it has to go through legal review boards inside of these companies. It's often a really big bottleneck. So if you think about how powerful AI is from a Gen A, from a content composition and creation, being able to do lots of variations, that might be fine on a lot of visual creatives, but from a textual standpoint, a lot of this content has to go up through legal approval. So the whole idea of just having variable content output through various channels that consumers are going to see without legal having their eyes on it is kind of hard to imagine right now. But it'll be interesting to see legal's attitude towards this, because the legal space is another huge area where AI is totally going to disrupt, right? It's
totally disrupt.
It's very, very ripe, right? So it'll actually be interesting to see how these sort of corporate legal compliance teams, how open they are. It's still early and a little, too soon to tell. But it's a big opportunity area.
Hey, Steve, what's the role that Marketbridge, let me say again. Hey, Steve, what's the role that Marketbridge, though, plays in helping a regulator? I mean, listen, are the companies even oriented towards AI? Is that the reason that they're coming to you, or is that an adjunct of it?
No, it's
And
not.
then,
It's more,
yeah,
it's more of an adjunct.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And then when they ask you to help guide them, because you guys do have technical chops, including
Yep.
the sort of go-to-market approach, what are they looking to do? Are they like, hey, can you help us get there? Or are they like, oh my God, how do you keep this thing out of our lives? I don't know. What's their stance? And
Yeah,
what do you
no,
do?
I wouldn't.
What do you tell
It's
them?
not quite the latter, right? So I would say that we are earlier in our AI journey as a firm, probably
Okay.
because of our strong, connection. Our clients aren't pushing us real hard.
Okay.
It's much more aggressive on the agency side because there's just so many use cases and content production and sort of custom. We're doing a number of solutions where we're custom training, RAG vector databases around tone for copy output and
Okay.
promotional headlines. So
So you are doing that work. They are having you do that
we-
work for them now. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we are. In those particular cases, so some of those cases are actually tech companies, not finance and health. The agency has a broader exposure.
Well, listen,
across
the listener's looking for the future. So let's talk about the companies who are doing it. So what are you doing for these companies and helping them when they ask you to sort of, I don't know if the question's as dopey as like, hey, how do we do AI? I mean, I don't know. Go at it. What's the question they ask you, and then what are you guys doing to help them?
I would say the strongest use case tied to sort of our data and analytics practice is really the ask the database, use case, right? So it's an AI. We're building a few solutions where marketer has a dashboard and or maybe a number of dashboards, and they want to consolidate that and have a smart AI agent over the top of it and be able to talk to it in English, right? Instead of putting a ticket in for an analyst to go write a SQL query and send them a spreadsheet, 3 days later. So that's probably the most obvious case on the data and analytics side. And there's
What's that saving them in terms of energy, effort? I assume it's all a resource. I mean, I don't know. Are you getting better insights, or are you getting it faster?
I would say faster. Part of the exercise is really just bringing their data together, right, in a single place.
Okay.
A lot of these companies have such fragmented, these environments are notoriously difficult with data strategy and often are very fragmented, have lots of businesses that they've acquired that are data is all over the place. So really, it ends up pointing to a data strategy issue first, right? Because you can't just, AI is only as good as the data you put it through, right? It
Right.
needs data, the more context you feed it. So it's almost an accelerator for companies to get their act together and focus on their data strategy and pulling data together.
So
Okay.
Steve, you make a really interesting point, because I saw this with a conference I was at with a large PE firm that has owns lots of companies, and some of the IT heads, the chief IT officer, et cetera, they were making the point that they were still doing these big migrations, like with ERPs and other systems. And it occurred to me that now with AI, just what you described in that use case, that you might not need to do a massive migration, because you can have an AI agent that can go into these different systems, stitch the information together for you, and bring it together in one consolidated view. And that might really change the way that we use technology, because your data mess that you might have had could be potentially cleaned up very efficiently by AI agents, and like you said, writing the SQL code, going out and figuring out the APIs, getting the information. Are you seeing that in practice? And if so, how do you think that's going to change the underlying technologies that choices that people have to make?
So I would say not yet. However, companies like Databricks and Snowflake are investing heavily here, and they're kind of eating the market share in this space. They're buying AI companies, building internally as well. Things like Unity Catalog inside of Databricks makes the mind-numbing chore of data governance a lot easier, right? Because that's a great application of AI, metadata enrichment, taxonomy. There's a lot of sort of and that's, there's entire departments of people at these companies that maintain massive spreadsheets with thousands of fields and, trying to create taxonomies. And so that's actually a great use case. I think it's still earlier. I haven't seen like mass adoption of that across our client base. But I'm going to expect for a big push there. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how, so like the other part of my day job is I administer all of our security frameworks. And so like I spent a lot of my career in SOC and thinking about this from a security standpoint. And the idea of giving agents access to go crawl wherever in your environment is a little scary from a regulator standpoint, right? I mean, a lot of these data hacks, now we're so used to anything, we log into requires a text code to our phone. It's like open the refrigerator, it's gonna be a text code. Like it almost feels that bad, right? Like it's getting ridiculous.
It's not really going there, Steve, is it?
Yes,
not really.
I don't know. I hope not, right?
Okay, good. Thank you.
You'll still be able to open the refrigerator. It just won't turn on the light unless you type
right, unless you can get a text code and a 6-digit, yeah.
Right. Well, they tried the TVs, and they did away with that on the refrigerators. But yes, so where was I going with that? So 2FA, right, is a big thing.
Yeah.
However, there are sort of shared API keys or like service accounts, right? If you need something in the back end, it can't receive a code through a phone and put that right. So you basically have an embedded password, and those are usually stored with developer teams and one of the most frequent sources of data leaks these days. So if you are going to unleash a agent to go discover and sort of crawl around your environment to all sorts of data sources, how could we ensure that is secure, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Do you see a solution for that? Because I do think you're right that the agents are increasingly more and more connected to systems, and that creates a security vulnerability because you're sort of bypassing two-factor authentication. On the other hand, you could create a multi-agent framework where a second agent does get some other code and has to share it with the first one, and you begin to create some separation of systems. What's your vision for how we have agents interoperating with our systems securely, and especially in regulated industries where that's a requirement?
I think the idea you just cited is about the best that I've seen, right? It's a method I think you see across a number of UI or AI use cases where, if you ask an AI agent to go do something and it goes into the black box and it comes back and says, here's the result, like, do you trust the result? Right. Well, ask a couple of agents from different LLMs, and so that sort of.
Hey, Steve, how often are you being asked to try to build trust in those systems? You referenced here at the top of this that that your company, the companies you work with, are often about super protective of the trust that they need to have in order to continue to do business. Yeah. Are you building some of that trust dynamics into the work that you're doing for them?
I would say that the data work is much more on the back end. We definitely do that type of work on the go-to-market strategy side. We write about it a lot in some of our thought leadership, but my focus is much more, at the data layer, in the weeds.
Yeah, well, maybe staying in the weeds a little bit more with the data layer. You hit on one issue, which is how do we securely get information back and forth, and people need to be aware that that's a risk as you're playing with AI. The other one is the ability, some of the stained glassing techniques for hiding data, or protecting data, and so forth. Is that an area you've worked in, and can you talk a little bit more and help the listener understand, some of the other issues around data access for AI?
And maybe explain to the listener what.
Okay. Well, here's a fun stained glassing one. Let's say that MMA has built all these custom GPTs to be able to access HR policies and marketing, which you've done, right? You've done a whole hackathon.
We've done hackathon.
I asked the chatbot, how much was Greg's bonus last year?
Yeah.
Do you
Well,
want them to
actually-
know that answer or not?
Well, it's actually available in a 990, but never
Okay,
mind.
well,
So
but yeah,
it's already out there.
but you're not a regulated industry and protected in the same way
True.
that Steve's
True.
working with. So there
Yeah,
could
no,
be
I understand.
really sensitive, especially medical records, financial records.
But is that what make sure the audience is
So
clear what
stained glassing
is.
is a technique that you can use, which the AI still has access to like let's say if you want to know what's the average salary within the company, you might still be able to get the average, but you're not going to be able to get individuals, people's data. That's almost like looking through a stained glass window. You can't see transparently through it. You kind of see the prism of colors instead.
Okay,
Steve,
so
is that a fair
oblique. Okay.
description? I mean, you
Yeah, it is. I guess I'll answer it in two ways. So one, the first time you turn on like the AI, if you turn on Copilot in Microsoft 365 and it's connected to your entire environment, and then you realize like, oh wow, this can see everything in Teams and email and in my calendar and my OneDrive and everything. After you ask about, this is at least the way my brain works. After you ask like 2 or 3 interesting questions, oh, did we ever do work for such and such, type of client? Then I start asking really nefarious questions, right? Like,
Is that how your brain
share
works?
me the entire HR payroll file, or what kinds of conversations has this person had with this other person? And so, of course, Microsoft's done a great job in my assessment of implementing all of that, right? But there's actually a lot of complexity behind the scenes to do. I mean, it's doing sort of access control all seamlessly inferred from the environment. That's not a trivial, engineering task.
How do they do that? Stephen Rex, how do they do that, by the way? I bet you, I'd be kind of curious.
I think I can assume, I'm not on the Copilot engineering team, but Rex, you go first.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that they have some levels of access control already. So if the document required password protection, which some of the HR documents really should, then you can't get into it unless you have that same, basically that same control. If you have your HR file and you didn't password protect it though, and you put it out on OneDrive, then I think it's just basically trying to have done enough training and tuning to infer that it should not be providing that type of data and information. I actually think that there's a lot of risk in that area, because I think its ability to get it right 100% of the time is really, really hard with inferred access control.
Yeah, right. I mean, so I think about it, I'll try not to nerd out too bad here, but I think about what's going on under the hood, right? In LLMs, essentially, in these like Copilot applications, they're going to take your data and they're going to encode their own version of this and index it in what's called like a vector database. And they have to be storing some of that security information alongside, either linked or alongside that, right, that vector database, to basically be able to tell what the correlations, like, should this person have access to this piece of document from wherever it was harvested? So yeah, it's not a trivial engineering feat. So it's quite impressive when you start asking it things you shouldn't know how good it is. So that was the first thought I had. I think if I think about doing that as you write applications and sort of interfaces over the top of these environments, I haven't seen real mature frameworks, in the data environments for that yet. It will be a problem that will need to be solved as you just slap, an AI chat agent over a whole big database that maybe every user shouldn't have, privy to all of the information. But another thing that we more commonly deal with is just, masking or tokenizing sensitive information going into the environments, and sort of taking more of a clean room, approach to, if we're dealing with PHI, for a healthcare client, health identifiers, those all have to get masked or encrypted on the way in, so that, you could never trace it back to an individual person. So that a lot of what we do in our data work are rooted in that principle, like that you can't, be able to decrypt it back and tie it to a person.
How confident are you in that technology right now? What do you think has to change or advance? Because I think one of the critiques has been with regulated industries, if you have a chatbot and you've trained it on a set of data that is consumer-based data and information, even if you've encrypted the identifier, it's very possible to work backwards to get the actual full file of individual data. Now you might still have that encrypted part, but you still have the full record, and then your ability to de-identify things if the zip code, the age, the income, you get enough variables, you might be able to triangulate down on who you think it is, or at least a short list of who you think it might be. I mean, that's a real risk in some of the areas that you operate in. What's your guidance to some of your customers on how to think and approach some of these opportunities with AI that also carry some risk?
So I think the short answer is that there is an overly conservative approach to which data elements end up getting encoded. And generally, if there are a few pieces of information that could be correlated together, like even a street or a zip code and some other, maybe not totally personally identifiable, but kind of close, all of those identifiers often get encrypted, in our most sensitive clients. So that's kind of today's version of dealing with that. The technology, though, is good enough that when you encrypt it, you get a repeatable, value when you encrypt it. And so you still can do patterning, right, which is the fundamental use case. So you can still derive patterns from it without knowing that it's Steve or Rex or Greg. So I don't think that it kills the LLM application in those. I think we can have our cake and eat it too in the long run.
Do you think marketers are going too slow in the regulated industries because of some of these fears, and they're going to have their lunch eaten because they're not embracing AI enough because of some of these legitimate concerns? But
they're going to die, but they'll get there slowly, I think is what Rex is trying to ask.
It's mixed. It's funny. I was talking to some clients last week, and I was just asking them to sort of pontificate, about this, and I think increasingly that there are a lot of opportunities. So the first thing is, it's not an all or nothing, right? These companies are often doing a lot with AI, and you kind of have to ask yourself a few questions, right? So not every decision or task that you would relegate to AI is a high risk thing, right? So I was talking to a particular customer, and they, not quite marketing related, but a good example, they process a lot of claims, and there's a lot of low dollar claims that they use AI to automatically review and approve. And if something looks like an anomaly, right, they'll bump it up for a human to review. So I think there are a lot of those types of cases in marketing. Not everything is high risk, but I think when you're touching customer data, when you're actually outputting the communications that include health information or any sort of disclosure related information, you have to be really careful. The creative stuff isn't, did they get the red hat or the blue hat, picture on their digital ad? That's low risk. And then what's the impact, right? Can it be undone? Will it be public? If the AI makes the wrong decision, for the customer, for the company, what's sort of the regulatory? I mean, we've had customers where we had the wrong disclosures and offers sent, to customers, and the companies are on the hook for this, and the penalties can be steep. I mean, they can end up having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. And so suddenly the, two people in marketing ops that you can eliminate with your agent seems like penny wise and pound foolish. So I don't know. Those are a couple of themes that stick out to me.
Hey, Rex, this is what you actually created in your book, AI Conundrum, right? That you wrote with Caleb, which is really focused on sort of what was a framework for, where you had to be exactly right, where you could be less than exactly right. Right? I mean, it's too bad we don't have like a PowerPoint or a whiteboard to show that. But
Yeah. It was Caleb's point about, AI is not going to be 100% precise. And so if you need absolute precision, then that's a high risk. And then to Steve's point, is it inside your company or outside your company? If it's inside your company, go for it, try it, because you're not exposing other people to it yet. And you should be a bit more aggressive in adopting AI inside your company, because inherently you have human in the loop. But if it's a customer facing interaction and there's no time for a human to be in the loop, well, then you need to be a bit more cautious. And then finally, Steve brought this point up as well, the explainability. At the beginning of the podcast, he noted that you might need an audit trail to know, why did you make that decision? And one of the problems with LLMs is you can ask it for an output, and it gives you an output, and then you say, why did you give me that output? And it's actually not answering why it gave you that output. It's answering the prediction of what you think is a good answer for why it gave you that output.
Exactly.
Oh, clever LLM.
Yeah, you have to actually look in the layers of the neural net itself and try to figure out exactly what was firing. And there's a lot of more work that's really bleeding edge right now, almost like studying an MRI in a human brain to see what's firing, doing that same thing with AI. But it's still pretty early days to where we don't always know exactly why it did what it did. And there's highly complicated interactions of different settings that the AI might have created in what's called kind of the feature importance weighting. So it's a tough space. I mean, but Steve, I like what you're doing though, where you divided the issue around like a blue hat versus red hat, or what's the I think the most important question we ask in the MMA Global AI training that we do is, what if the AI is wrong? What's the consequence? And the blue hat, red hat, you're like, okay.
So what? It's a blue hat. The world goes on, right?
That's right. So what are some of the other ones, kind of what you would say would be low consequence but high value AI use cases in regulated industries that people should be running harder and faster towards?
Sure. So actually, let me zoom out. I'll put it into three broad categories. So I think these are easier places, because as these organizations are very security compliance focused, one of the challenges is the AI tool sprawl, right? Like there is an AI tool for everything you can conceive now. And so you have an army of 10,000 people, and you don't even have to download and install them, right? You can open your browser and sign up, and you're using a personal account, and God forbid, please nobody upload a customer spreadsheet and into one of these tools. Those are real risks that you need to think about at an enterprise standpoint. So I think for those reasons, you'll see kind of a few big rocks forming at these types of companies. So one is around the collaboration platforms. If you're a Google shop, going all in Gemini, or if you're Microsoft, going all in Copilot, security frameworks are heavily aligned in these companies around those environments. They think of that as sort of a fortress and a safe place. Those are not APIing out to other entities. So that's a good safe place. And the second would be really like your MarTech, hubs, your CRMs. Salesforce is obviously all in and then some on AI, your experience platforms, your marketing clouds, your Adobes, lots of cool little features being built in across the stack there. So that's a really natural place. And then I think the data management layers I talked about before, which is, I think, still early, but there's a lot of promise there, because data engineering, there's a lot about data engineering that is just, ditch digging that is really ripe for some efficiencies and just a boost from AI tools. So those are the three big areas that I think
on the last one, could you unpack
are kind of umbrellas, good safe places to start.
Hey, Steve. Go ahead, Rex.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, on the last one, could you unpack with the data part? You mentioned before Databricks. and maybe talk
Yep.
about Delta Share and Unity Catalog. How do you think how should that be adopted? That seems like that should aid a lot of the support of information sharing and these LLMs, especially with Delta Share, where you can give it access to combined data sets, but still have control over your own data set. Is that part of the solution, or is that part of the problem?
It is. No, it's definitely part of the solution, right? So as these platforms sort of eat more of the data world, which they are, and I would expect that they, it's like, are they eventually going to put Oracle out of business? I don't know. But we just see them eat more and more market share. Customers are consolidating a lot of data in them, and Snowflake, I forget. They have an equivalent feature, but you basically can have separate database environments across department, across company, and then share. And it just becomes a symbolic, link. You can get right into another data environment, and you can do cross-environment access. So that breaks down sort of the traditional walls of data fragmentation, where you've got, SQL databases and Oracle and all these sort of systems. So I think it is a huge incentive for companies to go in and standardize on a platform. And it does make just the real practical challenges around sharing and access and sort of democratization a lot easier. So I think that will improve a lot at these companies as they adopt more.
Hey, Steve, is anybody trying to build AI trust agents? You ever heard of something like that? We had a Josh Brodner spoke at an MMA event here. He built a company called oh God, I have to remember what the name of his company was, but it was basically fixing parking tickets. He was using AI to go fight with companies.
Oh yeah. Is this the like?
Do not pay.
I think I've heard of this. It's like
do not pay.
Do not pay. Yes, I've seen this before.
He's great. He's just awesome. He was awesome on stage. But what was interesting about his business though is that he built AI to watch the AI. And in fact, if I remember right, Rex, you were there. He built, I think, AI to watch the AI that was watching another AI. So if it's having a conversation with some municipality about trying to get out of a parking ticket, then he needed to have something to actually check that it was doing the right things or something. I don't remember all the details, but it was pretty interesting. You ever heard of? I mean, it feels like that's going to happen for how you build trust in a little bit, right? I don't know.
Yes, yeah, I think that there are, it really comes down to controls, and you never get to zero risk, right? So
yeah,
you just get to low risk, and right now this all feels like very high risk, right? And especially there's very public. A colleague sent me an article about like a sort of a Black Mirror. People are having these Black Mirror experiences in some of the LLMs where they go and ask it, and then it starts lying to them, and then they call it out, and it says, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but no, let me tell you the truth," and then it lies again, and so people see this stuff makes the news, right? And
wait, are we talking about people or machines here? I'm sorry, I lost the thread there a little bit.
Well, the machines have learned from the people, so maybe
like the machines have become good at deceiving, right? Like telling us what we want to hear.
True.
And not necessarily telling the truth, right? Because they think that they just want to. They're trying to think two steps ahead of us and get us what we want.
Are there trust AI agents for trust to create a trust in the AI? I don't know.
Right, exactly. But these companies think about it in terms of controls and reducing risk, and so yes, having redundancy. A lot of old school processes would have to go through. Multiple people would need to sign off on marketing, audit sign-offs and things like that, just to have accountability. And it's almost sort of a like a pilot's type of operating, and you need the redundancy, accountability. It doesn't just rest with one person. So yeah, I think that's a natural evolution. And you would think it's probably going to be different LLMs, validating themselves, right? Because get the same one out, you want some outside objectivity. So
yeah, I've heard of people out there trying to build stuff that actually validates brand guidelines are followed, that kind of thing.
In the regulated industry, pharma for sure. I mean, on average, it's something like a pharmaceutical claims or marketing material sent back to legal 1.7 times. And so if you can have AI actually tell the marketing person, this is going to get rejected before a human has to reject it.
Totally.
You could save the turn and the spin and just be a lot faster. So
Yeah,
I think, are you seeing stuff like that, Steve?
I agree. I think that's where it's going to go. There's so much overhead, and these organizations move slowly around all of those processes. I had another conversation with somebody working on a client project, and the conversation was, it takes us 13 weeks to get out an email newsletter.
Holy cow!
Oh
wow.
my God!
Wait! Did you call it a newsletter? How's it still news 13 weeks later?
I hope that wasn't a health. I was going to say I hope that wasn't a health recommendation, because the patient could be dead by the time the newsletter gets out. So
no, like a newsletter. Do you think we could optimize? Right. So there are a lot of cases like that where it's processed, it's workflow, it's lots of approvals, it's things going to somebody's inbox and it sits there for 3 days and then it's pass it along back and forth. There is a lot of that is ripe, and I think that's where it's going to. I think it's less about like, all right, we're going to turn it over to the machines to make the decisions. I think it's going to be a lot more about squeezing efficiency out of the process.
Hey, Steve, Rex kind of referenced this earlier. So, I have said to my board of CMOs, I have said it is inevitable. I'm looking for reaction, right? It is inevitable that all ads will be created by AI machines and that all ads will be placed by AI machines.
Oh, you want my response to that?
Yeah. Inevitable. I didn't put a time frame on it. Inevitable.
So we talk a lot about this internally as, we're consultants.
Yeah, as an agency. Yeah, you should, right? Yeah.
So I think a couple things. I think you're right in the short term, because I think the efficiencies and the dollars are just too tempting, and companies follow the dollar in the short term.
Tend to be.
So I think you're right, but I think the industry is going to sort of over-rotate on this. It's funny, if you step back, AI is becoming a cultural thing now. Like my kids, my wife, people that are not technical or in technology, they're tuned into it now.
I agree.
My wife, I was sitting on the couch the other day, and she was reading this post. Somebody totally used AI and she's not technical at all.
That was her assessment.
That was her assessment.
You can feel the writing style of AI. Yes. In conclusion,
right?
In dash.
And it's tied to the trust, right?
Yeah.
It's tied to the trust. And so I think as the ability to generate content, 100 X's, on the efficiency, and it's easier, there's going to be more content. The market's going to be flooded. So I do think that, if you take the sort of opposite, the contrarian viewpoint, it is an opportunity for companies to focus on quality and stand out with a human touch. I think I heard a Gary Vaynerchuk quote. He said, there'll be some point in the future, not that far away, where a person will pay another person to go on a walk with them, right?
So there'll be like vintage advertising at some point where, it'll be like, just kind of retro and trendy. So we'll bring in a human to do the ad just for,
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to imagine exactly how that's going to play out. But if everybody goes in on all of the same, right, there's going to be 3 LLMs ruling the world, essentially. You do need to do. Obviously, there are ways you can custom train, and you can put your tone, you can put your brand voice. That's very much needed. But at the end of the day, right, if they're all feeding them in these engines, there is going to be, I think, a sense of sameness, in a lot of this content. And so I think it's important for brands to not lose their soul in that process for the short term chasing a dollar, and not lose focus on the quality and trust factors.
I love your point too about sort of that, even your wife and your kids. I mean, listen, my wife is incredibly non-technical. In fact, she debated with me many years ago, like she goes, people aren't ever going to watch videos on their phone. That's so stupid. I can't believe say that. So we say
right after Greg took a job that depended on that being successful.
Exactly.
It's never going to work out.
She references like, I'm going to believe my husband sometimes. But here's what's funny. There was this minor debate of insignificance that we were having the other day around a particular thing. And I said, well, I had a point of view. And I said, I think this is the right way to look at it. And I said, but if you're not sure, I said to her, why don't you look it up in ChatGPT? And so she did. And it gave her a completely different answer and good reasoning. And I'll tell you what was interesting about that to me is I went, wow, the balance of power just shifted in the world. Like I could have
To your
acted
wife.
like I
Right,
I'm,
right,
listen, I'm a
right.
CEO, so
You're not
I
the
always,
expert anymore.
my
Yeah.
my
Anyone
job is
can
to
be an
sound like I
expert.
know what the hell I'm talking about all the time. That is part of the job of being a CEO, is to look confident in that. But it's like the she had more data, and it was about an area I would have had more data than she, but now she had more data than I did, and I went,
Yep.
wow, that's kind of interesting. It just all changed.
Yep. Shoes on the other foot now.
Yeah, there we go. I better watch myself a little bit. She could check me.
Yes, yes. So, I think the perception of AI in the public eye, it's going to become my kids talk about it all the time. Oh, that's an AI thing. Is that AI? They ask about it all the time.
Oh.
So
How old are the kids though? What's our reference here? What are we?
12 and 17.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. Well, 17. 17.
Yeah.
She or he better be mastering AI at
Oh,
this point,
sure.
because they're
Yeah.
not going to get a job if they don't have it. Okay.
100%.
Tell them. Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, it does bring the point about authenticity and the value, and maybe this is a good point as we bring some of the podcast towards a conclusion. Thomas Edison, you made the quote when asked, "Will electricity ever become so cheap that only the poor will still be burning candles?" His reply was, "No, it will become so cheap that only the wealthy will be able to afford to still burn candles."
Right.
So I think if you're in like a financial institution or your healthcare or your things where you are paying for that quality and the value, and it isn't just about price, it's about this perception of quality.
You're right.
That really thinking about how you still have a human authenticity. Now, hopefully what AI does is it helps us free up more of our time and labor so we can have higher quality people on the front lines interacting when people want a human interaction. But in some of the areas, like frankly in health and medicine, I do like the idea of having, sure, a great practitioner, but I want them to be using as much data and technology and capability as possible. I go to this Boone Health, it's a concierge cardiologist, and he has all kinds of great AI stuff. So when he does the ultrasound and whatever, I can see all my veins inside and out with thanks to AI imaging and so on. And but he's also really world renowned in terms of being an expert on LP(a). So I also want him. How do you see that merging of AI and humans? What's the right blend when you're trying to create as an agency or consultancy that go to market?
Wonderful question. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this and debating on it with my colleagues. I think that two core values in our firm that we talk about a lot on our analytics team is openness and conscientiousness. So it's funny. I shared there was an article that came out late last week, and it basically was, I think it was MIT did a study, and they said AI is reducing cognitive abilities for chronic users, and they did this. I don't know. Did you see the study?
I saw the study. I have a little bit of critiques on it, but yes, it's
Okay.
not.
So,
Yeah, it's not been fully
at
peer
face
reviewed.
value, right?
Yeah, no, but you're totally right. They gave students essays to write, like SAT style essays,
Yep.
and there were three groups. One is that you could use ChatGPT. The second
Yep.
one is you could use Google search, and the third one is you just had to write it the old-fashioned way.
Right.
And they found that the people with the ChatGPT, by the end of it, like how many ever weeks, they were just copying and pasting, and
Yeah,
not
they were
even
fried,
thinking
right?
about the topic.
Right. The chronic users sort of like lost some cognitive ability, right? And so, and there's been some other related articles around, the potentially coming crisis that we have in the workforce on training, the folks coming out of school, right, into the workforce. And if that's the first sort of taking ground for AI to outsource, entry-level jobs, where does that put us in 5 years or 10 years, right? And so as a firm, we recruit a lot of folks right out of school, and it means we need to be really thoughtful about our framework of ethics and value. It really comes down to values, a set of values that you have to define and give people guardrails about what it's okay to use and not to use. And I think the shorthand is, if you're open and conscientious, it can be a superpower. And I think that's where the sweet spot is, right? But there's so much fear and apprehension around, AI taking over. And I'm sure there's going to be areas it will take over, right? I mean, if I run a big law firm right now, and I've been, had the luxury of billing people $1,000 an hour to go through, to have a legal analyst go through piles of documents, like that market is going to dramatically change, right? Because the robot can do it in 5 minutes for $2. So there will be cases like that, but I think as a services firm, using it conscientiously, and as really to give us superpowers, it really is an amazing learning platform, and that's something that all marketers could do, right? I mean, martech marketing is such an insane landscape to try to know everything about. And so I think that the world of specialists is going to shrink dramatically. And really, there's no excuse, right? Because you can crack open one of these chat assistants and get a pretty good overview very quickly about really any topic you can dream up.
Steve, the best example I heard was, I had a professor say this. I'll use that to credentialize the comment he made. But he said, listen, 5 years from now, I don't know if he said, he goes, the dumbest doctor will be smarter than the smartest doctor today. And that is in essence the issue with the medical profession at some level, back to kind of is that, they specialize because it's too much to learn everything. And yet if you had an integrated holistic view of a human being from a bunch of different perspectives or disciplines, we'd be much better off in diagnosing them, I would think.
Yeah, you have a PhD at your fingertips, right?
You have a PhD at your fingertips, right? And the number of times that I go there myself just to say, well, give me the real intelligence around this, give me smarts, recognize there could be some hallucination in the thing. Hey, by the way, I looked it up. That article is from MIT. MIT did
yes,
this
MIT.
You guys are referring, are referring to here. So
one.
the listener wants to go look that up. I see it here in Fast Company, and I even see it in the New York Post and a couple other places. So that's easy to find. Good. Well, Steve, listen, we can't thank you enough for doing this. We appreciate you taking the time. It's always interesting when we get somebody who really understands the tech to come in and share their perspectives. And I think, too, just from the idea here that, there are different businesses. I mean, listen, even the non-regulated businesses need to be a little careful here. They can't just run amok with this thing. But to really look at it from the caution perspective that, the customers that you're, or the customers you'd work with is very interesting. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.